Hi, this is Simon. Welcome to my lesson on the conversion of timbers and the seasoning of timbers. Now, I've just been down to the local park and took this picture of some logs which are ready to be converted into some useful pieces such as planks, which we can then use to make our wooden products from. So that's basically the conversion of timbers. Now, the seasoning of timbers is the controlled method of drying out the timber ready to use. Now, it's important to know a little bit of detail about these two methods, because this will then give you some choices when you come to purchase your materials and make your products from them. We can cut up a tree in lots of different ways. So before we talk about this, let's have a little think about the key words which we need on this log. Let's start from the outside, where you probably know we've got the bark, the protective layer of the tree. You can just see there's a little line here, which is called the cambium layer. And this is the really living part of the tree, which grows cells on this side of it to increase the width of the tree as it gets older. We've got here the freshly made wood, which is called the sapwood, and that contains a lot of the food and moisture and transportation system along the tree to enable it to grow. We've got here the older wood, which is called the heartwood, which is partially dried out. And then in the center, we have got the main part which the tree started off with, which is called the pith. Now, you're probably very aware of the annual rings, this lovely feature that we see on the log with these lines running around the whole width of the tree. And this plays a very important feature in the method of converting our timber. So let's have a look at the cells in a tree, and we might understand these annual rings a little bit more. Imagine a series of tubes which are connected together, which allow the transportation of water to grow, nutrients also to grow, and also the return of sap and resin, which will help build the tree up. So when we cut down a tree, we're exposing these cells, and that allows a lot of the water which is left in the cells to then come out. So these cells will grow at different rates depending on how much foliage they've got, how many leaves are on the tree, how much water is available, and how much sunlight. And you can imagine that in spring and summer, we're going to have an abundance of those factors, so we get larger cells growing. And then when we get back into the autumn and winter, that again, we get a reduction of these items, and the cells then become smaller in size. And again, that is repeated then year on year out, over and over again. And that's how the annual rings are formed. I want to look at two methods of cutting our wood up, of converting our log. And then we can have a discussion about how the annual rings will affect these methods. So this first method is just plain sawn or slab sawn. And we just take the tree and we cut it up into equal thicknesses all the way down the trunk like this. It's quite simple to do, and therefore it is cost effective. So this one we call plain sawn. Now, a second method is called quarter sawn. And this is where we take the wood and we cut it into quarters first. That's obviously where it gets its name from. So we can take a cut across there for the log in half, and then we can rotate the log and we can cut it again so that we get these quarters. So let's just focus in on this quarter that we have cut. Let's give you a little bit more detail about that. The first cut would be made along this piece here, like so, and then the log would be rotated and a second piece would be cut like so, and then that would be rotated and you get a third piece like so, and then a fourth piece and a fifth piece, just by rotating the log until we get all the planks out of it that we possibly can. Now let's just zoom into this log and see what is going on here with the annual rings. Can you see the annual rings here in the quarter sawn wood? They're quite short and they're around about 90 degrees to the edge of the wood. Obviously, as you move around, that angle changes a little bit, but you can see that the grain is relatively the same size all the way along there. Whilst the rings in the plain sawn wood, you can see are all sorts of different lengths and distances, especially here, for example. And we get a really big annual ring going around there. So here we have a range of lengths of the annual rings. And over here we have more of an equal length of rings. Right, why is that important? Well, it's all to do with the drying out of the wood. So you can imagine that we're going to lose a lot of moisture along these rings here. And we're going to have slower moisture loss along the shorter rings. So the effect that that has on a slab like this is that it will start to dry out unevenly and it will then form this, whoops, like that, which is called cupping. And obviously we want to control that and avoid it. On the quarter sawn wood, this is less likely to happen, if at all, because the annual rings are all the same length. Okay, let's just zoom back out again. I'm going to switch on some planks here and have a look at the effect of this cutting. This is a very typical effect of plain sawn wood, where we've got this like flame feature running along the length. And also you can see here in the quarter sawn that it doesn't appear so much because we've attacked the grain at a different angle. Now there is another little feature here which I'd like to explain, which occurs in quarter sawn woods, particularly in oaks. Now going back to the diagram here, what I'd like to add are some extra cells which are called medullary rays. And their function is to communicate across the tree like this, and they feed the nutrients and water and sap and keep those level layers alive. Now when they get cut here on the radial sawn pieces, they get cut at quite an angle. And then this gives us an extra feature in the wood, which we call figure. Figure doesn't happen in all types of wood, but it particularly happens in oak. And obviously it looks very good, and therefore it will cost you more. So to conclude, plain sawn is cost effective because it is easier to produce in this method. And therefore it is used a lot on softwoods where we want a more viable wood, maybe for outdoor use and building sites. Where quarter sawn work is more costly to produce, it's because it is more difficult to do and more time consuming. And a lot of time it's used on the hardwoods to get this very decorative grain so that we can use it for furniture making. Conversion can be done on a sawmill, and I've got a picture here of a man using a relative small one for small logs, but they do get bigger. Now there is another method of converting wood, and that is with a rotary cutter. And this is when we want to produce not planks, but we want to produce the ply layers or really thin pieces which are called veneers. Now this machine is rather like a wood lathe, but absolutely much bigger. And we've got a point on this side, we'll have a point in the center on this side. So it's like turning between centers. A knife will be brought into the log like this, and then as the log is rotated round, we'll get a sheet of ply coming off, because the knife will peel that away like so, and then we'll get a long length of ply coming off, so with the grain going in this sort of direction. So that concludes my lesson on conversion of timbers, and I'd hope you join me next for the seasoning of timbers.